everybody. This is my presentation on marketing and deterministic screens. Deterministic screens. The term was first coined by Kenneth Burke in his 1966 essay Language as Symbolic Action, and he says if any given terminology is a reflection of reality, by its very nature as a terminology, it must be a selection of reality, and to this extent, it must also be a deflection of reality. So basically, what he's saying is that reality is socially constructed, and our individual perceptions of reality, any words that we use, they're they're going to reflect some our reality and select some of our reality, but they're also going to deflect some reality that we're not seeing, basically. And some examples just to help illustrate that point. I think you'll remember the student athlete term that we went over in class. For example, student athlete deflects away from the fact that they are just athletes there to play a sport and that they are actually students just like the rest of us going to school to get a degree. And there's also the photos of the same object through different lenses. Kenneth Burke uses this to say that deterministic screens are like viewing the same photo of the same thing through a different lens. So therefore, depending on your deterministic screen, depending on your construction of reality, you might see something different than someone else. And there down in the corner is a picture of Kenneth. I think he represents our mood during this quarantine. So, marketing and deterministic screens, two examples that I came up with. Uh, First one is the Sugar Association's attempt to frame cane sugar as healthy and quote unquote natural. And the post World War II promotion of the wartime Jeep to civilian consumers. As you can see down here, I have some images, and I think the Sugar Association one is particularly interesting because you'll see their slogan is "There's more to sugar," which I think is also is kind of funny because it's kind of a ham-fisted attempt to make you think that maybe sugar isn't something that it is. And nothing says America like a Jeep, so I had to put that in there. All right, so about the Sugar Association. So we have to figure out why is the word natural always associated with health and healthiness. And the reason for that is many contemporary health risks are understood to be products of human activities originally designed to mitigate risk. For example, genetic modification and pesticides were first introduced so that farmers and crop people who worked with crops could have more consistent and bountiful, harvests. But now they are viewed as sort of these contaminants in our food supply. The other thing is the FDA has no official definition for natural, so that makes it easy. That gives you a lot of leeway when it comes to labeling a food product as natural. There's no accepted definition. So there's a lot of room for interpretation there. And also labels and definitions, because you're selling something, they're often strategically constructed to emphasize the positives rather than the negatives. And you'll see that the visuals for the on the website of the Sugar Association sort of follow that notion of natural. Um, and this is where I came across this interesting definition of landscape. Uh, Landscapes are defined as symbolic environments created by human acts of conferring meaning to nature and the environment. Basically, what that means is that before humans came around, animals were walking around saying, "Oh, this is a great landscape." We came up with that word, and we have our own ideas of what a beautiful natural landscape looks like. And you'll see through the screenshot that I took of the website, all of it looks very, very sort of nature centered and earthy to kind of direct your attention away from the fact that You know, if you give your kid too much Coca-Cola, he could be bouncing off the walls. But I rest my case. The autobiography of a Jeep. One interesting quote that I found while reading this paper, this study that I found, um, was a quote in the very beginning. It said, "Economics isn't simply a scientific or mathematical enterprise. Economists are poets and storytellers engaging in the larger conversation of mankind." What that means in the context of this is basically, yes, there was a lot of sort of shift in the economy leading up to and after World War II. There was a lot of urbanization in the beginning of the 20th century. There was a post-war a boom of sorts, but people have to be persuaded to move around and take those jobs. It's not just that they do it. Sometimes they have to be persuaded. So I do think persuasion plays a part in the economy. Just some background on the Jeep. In preparation for war, the Army began designing the Jeep, that's short for General Purpose, in 1940, and it was used overseas in early 1942. And there was also a huge market for vehicles after the war because in such a time of like sacrifice, you know, when people were rationing things like food, um, people often didn't have the luxury to buy a brand new vehicle, and purchases like that were seen as not essential were put off until after the war. Okay, so the autobiography of a Jeep is actually a 9-minute black and white short film. It was released in 1943 after our first major victory. And what you have to understand, what's important about it, is it presents the Jeep as a person. Like the narrator is playing the role of the Jeep. And it presents itself as like a patriotic underdog who rises to the occasion, sort of like um, the average American, patriotic American. And it really uh, uh, plays on the myth of the American dream because it kind of implies that success is built on materialism and patriotism, and this works because of the booming post-war economy. Because I mean, it's right there in your face. We just won the war, and the economy is doing great. So it's hard to argue with that. And also, for the first time, a lot of people are experiencing financial security. So why, it's a real easy sort of representation to latch on to. But it doesn't, and I can't say I blame the filmmakers for this. It sort of deflects away from the mechanical problems, and it doesn't actually say that it's made for war, not for family, so its value is socially constructed. Uh, and here's the film, if a link to the film, if you'd like to watch it. From my point of view, there are some ethical considerations involved. You might have noticed throughout this presentation, a lot of it has to do with deception, subtle deception. And in my opinion, deterministic screens are inherently deceptive because they aren't holistic. Um, Deterministic screens, by their very definition, do not capture the whole picture. There's always another side to whatever story you're trying to tell. But there is something called rhetoric of enlightened choice, and that defines an issue, and within that definition, identifies the choices that exist to mitigate risk and promote health. And I think rhetoric should be careful not to purposely showcase positive attributes and downplay the negative attributes. Because obviously, I mean, you want to be a good salesperson, but you don't want to outright mislead people. And my conclusion is that skilled redders in marketing have the potential to boost the quality of products because if we are good at our jobs, then we won't have to, you know, lie to people or mislead them in any way. And through persuasion, we can sell more products and improve the economy. Here are my works cited, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.